Hello, everybody. Hi, Alla. Welcome to my live stream. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Hi, everyone.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Nancy True live stream where we talk about product management, leadership, entrepreneurship, and occasionally spirituality. Today, my guest is a psych safety coach. Her name is Alla Weinberg. She wrote a book called A Culture of Safety, where she talks about building work environments where people think, collaborate, and innovate. And she also talks about the critical link between emotional safety and peak performance within teams and organizations. So, Ala, I'm going to pass the mic over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks so much, Nancy, for having me on this live stream. Hi, everyone. I'm Alla Weinberg, and as Nancy mentioned, I'm a psychological safety coach. But really, what I focus on are all the different aspects um, that are needed to create safety, which is physical, emotional, and psychological safety. All three are needed for us as human beings to really feel safe with each other. And in my research and in my work, and also in my lived experience, I have found that without safety, I personally and others that I work with, we can't think as well, we can't collaborate, we can't connect with each other, we can't be as creative, and we can't innovate.
How did you become a psychological safety coach?
Honestly, it's from my own lived experience of working in a lot of environments. And I also come from tech. I'm previously a product designer and service designer, and just working in a lot of environments where I didn't feel psychologically safe and saw the impact and the results of that on the actual products, on what we were trying to create, and how um, they weren't as good quality as we wanted it to be, and also it impacts business results as
Can,
well.
yeah, can you say more about what psychological safety is and how it actually impacts the products that we create?
Yes. Psychological safety is something that is created in groups. It's a relational thing. It's created in relationships. And what it means is when I'm in relationship to you, just a one-on-one as an individual, or if I'm in a group in my team, for example, I feel okay. I don't feel scared to bring up a new idea, admit a mistake, talk about an emotion that I'm feeling, um, ask for help, or be vulnerable about something that I'm struggling with. And most of the time, most of the environments I worked in, we didn't have those conversations. We had conversations about the work, about the tasks, about what needs to get done, about
Mhm.
status, right? But we didn't have those conversations about how are we working together? How are we relating to each other? Are we able to be open and honest with each other?
And why do we need to be open and honest with each other?
Um, I mean, it goes directly to productivity and to quality and to performance. If we're
Mhm.
not able to be open and honest with each other, what happens is we don't know how to do something, or maybe we made a mistake, or
Yeah.
maybe we have a better idea of how to do something, but we never say it.
Mhm.
And it has compounding consequences, and it can actually even have life threatening consequences. So for example, Boeing again recently had an incident where, the door of the airplane flew off, and I mean, people could have been seriously injured,
Mhm.
and literally died as a
Yes.
result. And this is because engineers didn't feel safe
Mhm.
to challenge certain practices, or to slow down the deadline and say, "Hey, I actually need more time to QA this,"
Right.
um, you know, um, or we need to think about this differently, or just even to say this is unsafe.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough um, honesty happening, and people's lives were literally in danger. And if you work for an industry where it's more of a SaaS product, more in the tech space where it's not lives on the line,
Mhm.
it's business outcomes that are on the line. You don't share that a good idea you have, you don't share the mistake that you saw that somebody made, you don't share that the timelines or the deadlines are too crunched and people are getting burnt out and leaving the company,
Right.
all of that goes to bottom line results.
There's a very specific use case that I experienced, which
Mm,
is it just seemed that management or leadership had a different view, or they because they're placing their judgment onto you, and
mhm,
you're trying to please them. And so in that in that setup, what I experienced is, well, it's not about what I want. It's never about what I think,
mm,
because at the end of the day, I'm being judged.
right.
So how do you balance that when we're in an environment that's just dependent on their judgment of you?
This is really where vulnerability comes into play,
Mm,
and hopefully building enough of a relationship with those people to actually be able to say, "Hey, I feel judged," to be able to say that, um, and to have a conversation about, um, what can we do so that, or how can we have conversations, or what can we change together
right.
that, where my voice can also be considered. It doesn't mean you
Mm,
have to take every suggestion that I give, but
yeah,
I would like to feel heard and considered.
I love
Um,
that.
and we just don't have those conversations at work. And I want to, and that's been my life's purpose, is to help bring those conversations
I
to work.
love your life purpose. We need more of you in every company there is.
And I know these things seem really simple, asking for help, right? Like sharing that you don't know how to do something, or, "Oh, I made a mistake. Can I get some help with that?" All of these things seem very simple, and yet they don't happen.
They don't happen because, again, we're judged. We
Mhm.
are afraid to ask
Yes.
for help because then leadership would think that, "Oh, why are you asking for help? At your level, you don't need any help, or at your level, you should
Mhm.
already know how to do this."
Yes. And as you go up the ladder,
Yeah.
it gets lonelier and harder because you are expected to have all the answers,
Yes,
right? At that point. Um, and you can't let on that maybe you don't know,
right.
and you need help, because then,
Yes.
yeah, what will people think? Oh, you're not performing
Yeah,
now.
that's exactly it, and even
Yeah.
as simple as, "I need more time," or, "I
Mhm.
just joined a new team," you can't
Mhm.
expect that I could operate at the same level as someone who's been on the team for years. But
Right.
all of those things we're afraid to say because
Yes.
then we're judged as a low performer.
Yeah. And that's exactly, fear is exactly the opposite of safety. So we think that danger is the opposite of safety, but for human beings, it's fear. And so you
Oh,
named it. We're afraid,
yes, we're
and
afraid.
when we're afraid, then there's no safety.
What is the difference between danger and fear?
Um, Real or perceived danger is the way that our nervous system interprets signals from our environment.
Mhm.
And I think this is something we forget, because especially in the United States, we value and kind of almost idealize intellect so much. We
Mhm.
forget about the rest of the body. We just like want to be heads. There is the rest of the body, and our entire body is designed still to this day to keep us alive. And our body has a nervous system, so
Mhm.
literally nerves running down our entire body into our brain,
Yeah.
right? And so, every day, even as we're talking right now, my nervous system is pinging you. You're like, "Is this safe? Is this person safe?" And it's pinging on my environment. Is my environment safe? Is there going to be a lion that's going to jump
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
at me, right? And so danger is my nervous system interpreting signals in my environment, or
Mhm.
between nervous systems, between people, as a threat to my survival. Fear is an emotional response to
Mm,
to those signals. That's an emotional response. We don't have necessarily fear to every signal that we
mhm,
receive from our environment. But the danger and fear do go together in that if my nervous system thinks, hey, something's threatening my survival, oftentimes the emotion that will follow is fear. And it makes sense, especially in work environments, because of the power dynamics.
mhm.
Your boss or your boss's boss, right? Like, or an executive has the power to
Yes,
fire you.
yes,
And that could lead to a danger to your survival. You won't be able to take care of your basic human needs, right?
absolutely.
Of course there's fear. Of course. That is the way the system is set up in that case.
Yes, everything is so true. That brings me to my first official question. Can you explain the neuroscience, which you kind of already did?
I started, yes.
Yeah. Behind why we feel less capable and sometimes dumber when we don't feel safe, and how does this impact our professional performance?
Yes. So as human beings, again, our entire body is wired, especially our nervous system, to make sure we stay alive. That is its only purpose. I know that we in our modern time have many other purposes as knowledge workers, but our body does not. And
Wait, so
so
does that mean our bodies have not yet evolved?
they have not. They have not yet involved. They
Come
still
on,
think
let's evolve.
they still think a lion is going to eat you when you get an email from your manager
Mhm, mhm.
that says, let's talk. That email,
Oh my
your
gosh.
body is like, I'm going to get eaten by a
Yes,
lion.
that's where I get goosebumps, my heart starts racing, and my face turns red,
Exactly.
can't breathe, yeah.
This is your nervous system response going into survival mode. And we have three different survival modes: fight, flight, freeze, right?
Mhm,
And so what you just described is your body then taking blood
mm,
away from certain parts of your brain, such
mm,
as the prefrontal cortex, which is the part we use to think, to
mhm.
analyze, to be creative, and putting it into other parts of your body, like your arms, which is why, and hands, which is why your hands or palms are getting sweaty,
Yes,
right? Your heart starts to beat
yeah,
faster because it's your body is preparing to fight off the lion or to run away from it.
yeah. Or
Okay.
freeze,
Or
just
freeze or
stay.
play dead, right? Play dead. um, and so at that point, your body, if it's in its survival mode, no longer feel
Right,
like it no longer is acting as if it needs access to think about it. You're not going to be like, should I run away or should I, like, you're not going to sit there and think about it. You're
yeah,
going to just have to act to survive.
that's why we
And so
can't
that,
think.
and that's why we can't think.
Mhm,
And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I have when I've gone into survival mode in certain situations at work. I actually like my peripheral vision narrows. I actually feel like I'm in a little bit of a tunnel. And this is where creativity is significantly impacted because I literally can't think outside of this tunnel again because that focus is what helps us survive. And that's what our body's trying to do. All it's trying to do, I'm going to keep you alive. It does not care about your next meeting. It just wants to keep you alive.
that is that makes so much sense now because there were moments where I mean, I didn't know at the time, but afterwards, my therapist told me that whatever my manager was saying to me in that moment is actually considered gaslighting. But
Mm,
when they're saying these things, and like you said, it's tunnel vision time, and you're just
yeah,
listening to them, and
yeah.
you can't. Basically, it's like your sense, your common sense, or just any other sense has been turned off, and so you're just listening to one person
Mhm,
telling you that everything you're doing is wrong or terrible,
yeah,
you're just not good enough, and then you just end up believing them because your
mhm,
perception is like, basically, your senses are off.
yes. And that is actually true, like, parts of our brain do get turned off because
Yeah,
they're not essential to our survival in that
so
moment.
true.
And all your body wants to do is, "I just need to make it through this meeting
Yes.
and survive it
Yes.
and come out alive." through
So
it.
true. Okay. So that explains why in that moment I felt dumber,
Yeah.
literally because I couldn't think.
Yeah, you literally cannot think. And obviously, this impacts performance because if you're in a chronic state of
Yeah.
survival, which is what happens if you're under high amounts of stress for long periods of time, which we're
Yeah.
not, again, wired to do as human beings, then you're just not going to be able to have the good ideas or come up with a creative workaround or solution to something. You're not going to be able to perform at your best. That's just neurobiologically, physiologically the case. Like that's just because you're a human being who's a biological creature.
Makes so much sense now. Which takes me to my second question, which is how do toxic environments stifle creativity and productivity? We started talking about this, but
Hmm.
curious if you could share some data points when you're working with some of your clients.
Hmm. Yes. So, I mean, look at the word toxic. When something is toxic, it literally means it's harmful to your health or to your life, right? If you take if you eat like a toxic substance of some sort, you could die
Mhm,
from it. And so, when you're in a toxic environment where there is gaslighting, that is a form of a toxic
mhm,
environment. When there's bullying,
yeah,
right? When there's a lot of aggression, or maybe sexism, racism, like a lot of those that discrimination, that disrespect that people feel.
yeah,
Um, what happens is, again, our bodies go into that survival mode and stay there, and they get stuck in that survival mode. So, again, if you imagine us being dumber, maybe for an hour, you had that meeting with your boss, and you need like a good 30 minutes to shake it off to
you
sort of come
sometimes
back to
even longer, sometimes the
sometimes
whole day
the entire
is
day. I
off.
know. I've had more than a couple days, where
Yes,
I needed,
yes,
right? But imagine if that never ends.
yeah,
This is the time, like you never get a break where you get to come back to, a kind of like a steady, regulated state.
yeah,
And if that's the case, again, your ability to think, to be creative, to honestly, to even accomplish your work at the quality level that you can honestly do, to be your best at work, it becomes physically impossible for you to do that. But more importantly, it becomes impossible to form healthy relationships at work,
mhm.
to feel connected to each other, to collaborate. And so all of that, and then when people say, "Oh, my team is having communication issues," that's always the case when I'm brought in. Oh, this is the blanket term, like we're having communication issues.
Is that
And
the
what I,
actual issue though?
but that's not the actual
Right,
issue. The When people feel connected to each other, which is not happening in toxic environments, which is what makes it toxic,
right.
because connection is as important to human beings as food and water and sleep.
Mhm.
Connection is one of those essentials. If that doesn't exist in this environment because it's toxic, we literally can't do work. We just can't, like, we won't be able to do work.
That explains so much in my own experience where for a period of time, it just seemed like nothing I would nothing was working. Nothing was ever good enough. And because the work output is questionable, then
Mm.
your leadership sees it. Then they judge you some more. And this cycle just repeats
It
itself.
starts to get a cycle. Yes. Yeah. And then your ability to perform continues to decrease because you're getting more and more stressed
Yeah.
about this feedback, right?
Yes.
And and the work quality keeps going down and down. And
Mhm.
you don't have anybody to be honest with, and you don't have anybody to ask for help with, and you don't have um, the ability to be honest in these situations because
Yeah.
you don't have safety because you're working in a toxic environment, right? Um, all of that leads to just honestly people burning out. And also, when we're in survival mode, what happens is, this goes directly to productivity. A lot of our energy then that our body expands, that our mind expands,
Mhm.
is on ourselves and trying to keep ourselves safe
Mhm.
and trying to survive. And so we honestly just even have less energy and less mental space
Yes.
to think about work and to be creative and to actually do things. And so being in survival mode takes vital energy, life energy away from us, that we could be putting towards work if we were in a healthy and safe environment.
What happens in and that takes me to my,
Hmm.
next question, which is in a lot of these tech companies, they
Yes.
have this punishment and reward model. And the system is it's like how do you move away from that? Because you mentioned when we first met that we should move away from the punishment slash reward model, and that is rooted in just very outdated practices. What other
Hmm.
alternatives are there?
Um, I think again, the alternative is the punishment and reward is extrinsic motivation. So it's something
Yes.
outside of me. If you aren't performing, you're going to be put on a performance improvement
Mhm.
plan, right? PIP. If you are a workaholic and you are performing, then we're going to give you a bonus or of
Mhm.
some sort, right? Like
Mhm.
that's going to be reflected in
Yes.
there. And that does not come from inside of me as an individual.
Mm.
What actually works long term, and reward and punishment does not work long term, and
Mm.
it actually diminishes safety because people then are afraid, oh, I'm not going to lose that bonus or I'm going
Right.
to get punished, right? So now it creates fear. The
Yes.
alternative to that is intrinsic, internal motivation. How
Mm.
do I like having conversations with your managers? How do you want to grow? How do I want to grow? Where are areas that I want to stretch? Maybe I can be put on an assignment that helps me learn something a little bit more. And again, um, creating more meaning. Like I'm doing this for something meaningful. Yes, like we businesses want to make money. That's fine. We all need money. Like that we live in a capitalist society. I understand that. But that's not the motivator for people. It's connecting to something greater
Mm.
that aligns with their values,
Mm.
right? That aligns with how they want to grow as a person, as a professional, and so it's much more about um, cultivating um, and growing people from the inside out rather than just leading them with these carrots continuously.
When I became a manager, there was no training.
Yes,
No
it's
one
because you are good as an IC, right?
correct, and no one taught me or gave me tools to figure out how to motivate others.
Hmm.
Um, and it didn't seem like that was a super important element of the job. What was more important, or at least the expectation that was placed on me as a manager is, well, you have to set expectation and measure progress.
Right.
It just seems like the system is not set up to train people to operate in the most optimal way.
It is not. It's not set up for human beings.
Right.
It comes from an industrialized mindset. It's
Mm.
set up for machines because machines can be optimized and machines
Mhm.
can become more efficient and machines can produce more and more and more over time.
Mm.
People cannot. People are biological creatures.
And
We cannot,
emotional.
and emotional
Mhm.
creatures. We cannot. That's not possible with people. But the way we're currently working, which is why I wrote my book, A Culture of Safety, it does not work for human beings.
Tell us more about what you wrote in that book.
Well, I went through kind of a lot of what we just talked about, the neuroscience behind why we need a culture of safety and
Mhm.
providing practical ways that you can start to build safety in your team or in your organization. And those are, uh, again, very human connecting practices, such as, for example, you're starting a new project or a new initiative. You have a team. on it to get, like a new team has formed around it.
Mhm.
Come together as a team and talk about what are your concerns or fears around um, this project. Like people already come with preconceived notions and assumptions. So talk about your fears around it. Talk about your hopes for the
Mhm.
project. Start at the emotional level as soon as possible,
Mm.
right? Now you're making it okay to talk about emotions, because when you get to a hard point in the project, and every project has a hard point,
Right.
somebody can say, I'm really having a hard time with this right now. I'm really
Mhm.
struggling. I'm really stressed out. And saying that and being heard in that, and somebody else saying, "Oh yeah, I feel the same way. We're really in a tough spot here together."
Mhm.
That that helps people make it through. It connects people, it heals people, and produces great work at the end of the day.
I could see from the organization's perspective that they need some kind of discipline or some kind of process to manage the quote unquote low performers. So, how do we balance the process we see today where someone is not performing and they just we put them on a pip?
Mhm,
So, if it
mhm.
isn't, and I feel like that process might be kind of drastic, is there other things that organizations can do to manage performance when it comes to low performers?
Yeah. Um, I think you do this, Nancy. I think this is something that you offer of people is coaching. I think coaching is a great way to help low performers. First, to unpack what's happened
Mm,
that they're performing this way. And this is also a mindset shift too. Why are you not doing this? Why are you not performing? Two, what's happening for you that you're
mhm,
not performing? Maybe there's something in their life, personal life, that's really impacting their ability to perform at this point. Maybe they're having a health issue, or have to take care of a family member, or somebody just passed away. There's so many reasons
right.
why somebody could be feeling this way. So just switching from why aren't you performing? You must not care and might not want this job, to what is happening for you, or maybe what has happened to you that's up for you right now.
Mhm,
So really understanding at a much deeper level what's actually going on here.
mhm,
And it could potentially be like the fit of their role is not the right fit.
right.
Like what they're doing and what they're best at and isn't the right fit. It doesn't mean they need to go on a pip. It just means, oh, maybe we need to put them on a different team, or we need to rethink this person's role. So it's about getting creative and connecting and really understanding each other, rather than assuming, or there's this blanket assumption, oh, they're underperforming, so they must be managed and somehow forced, again from the outside externally, to produce more, to perform more, rather than, we're gonna see you as a human being, as a person, that something's happening for you, and support you into being at your best, even if that means maybe we need to rethink your role in what you're doing.
The system that I came from, or the system that I'm familiar with, is
Mm,
management. It, it it on some level it feels like management versus employees. And when one employee is
mm,
quote unquote not performing well on one particular team, then
mhm.
all of the managers in the company start kind of judging, oh, low performer can't join my team. And
Right.
HR also has a rule that if you didn't meet all of the expectations, you can't switch teams. So
Mm.
then it's kind of a lose-lose
It's
situation,
a
right?
lose-lose situation. Yeah.
I mean, I understand why they have standards like that, but in practice, not meeting all the expectations on one team doesn't mean that you will forever
Yeah,
not meet all the expectations. And but
exactly.
but at the same time, I would say most of the managers out there would not take the time to understand the
Yes. Yes.
human issues underneath what
Yes.
it says on paper.
And they're gonna miss out on somebody real potentially very talented and because they got hired in the first place. So obviously they knew what they were doing to some degree, right? Like they have talent, they have intelligence, they do actually know how to do the work. And I've seen many times and I've coached people, and I've coached teams where we made the decision, let's move a person
Mhm.
around. And then they
They
blossomed.
thrive.
They thrived. They just weren't in the right role with and not doing the work that is their strength, they're best at, and maybe not with a manager that knows how to bring out the best for them, but just making that little change, and suddenly they're top performer.
Yeah. I love
you
that. I
know?
love those stories. We have someone from the audience chiming in. Hi,
All
Prachi.
right.
Thanks for tuning in. So, Prachi says, playing a devil's advocate here, should one try to empathize with the person that might be making you feel emotionally unsafe? Oh my gosh, what a great question.
Mm.
How do you differentiate between a psychopath manager slash coworker and someone who might be a toughie but can actually help you? Love this question.
I would say yes, try to empathize with someone who's making you feel emotionally unsafe in that what is happening for them, what pressures are they feeling that they are behaving this way, or what's happening in their life that is again making them behave this way. the I mean, yes, there are obviously psychopathic people and narcissistic people out
A
in the world,
lot in corporate
100%.
America.
100%, and more as you go up the levels,
Mhm.
right? um and but if we enter every situation scared, again, scared, oh, is this person narcissistic? Is this person going to harm me? You're going to come already armored to that situation.
Mhm.
You're going to other the person, like they're against me, they're going to attack me, right? They're just another lion trying to attack you at that point. And so again, it's trying to give them a chance, try to shift your thinking, try to understand, and like you were saying, empathize what might be going on for them that they're behaving in this way. Most behaviors that are like aggressive are people taking credit for something you've done, or people discounting you, for example. All of those bad behaviors that we gaslighting, like you were mentioning,
Mhm.
Nancy, right?
Mhm.
All those really bad behaviors are people in chronic survival mode, um,
Yes,
just just behaving in bad ways because that is what they know. That's their life experience. That's what they know will keep them safe and alive. Um, and so the connection, again, if we can empathize and connect and actually build a relationship with that person, that's what's going to break through that
I love
behavior.
that. I am now seeing an image of someone who struggled a ton, who actually needed to step over dead bodies to survive. And
Mm,
the way they operate would definitely be very different from someone who didn't have to go through that.
yeah, yeah. And
Mm,
I also just want to say, even for myself, all of us behave badly when we are in survival mode
mm,
because we cannot think of a better way, because we cannot be as kind as we normally would, because all of our attention and all of our physiology, all the hormones running through our body is just there to keep us alive. All you're trying to do, even no matter what your intellectual goal is, your body's goal is stay alive. And I will do that in any way possible. And so sometimes people go into fight mode and they're aggressive and they're bullying.
mm.
Sometimes people go into flight mode and they just won't meet with you one on one, right? Like they won't talk to you, they will avoid you, they will, completely just ghost you on some occasions, right? And we do this. The thing is, all of us do this when we're under stress, when we get into survival mode, we all behave badly. The key, though, is to recognize when we're behaving badly and have enough safety, which means having a close enough relationship with people to be able to say, I behave badly, I'm so sorry, I was stressed out, I shouldn't have done that. It's my fault. Taking responsibility and repairing with each other, which is again not anything I see often enough at work. But
Mhm.
that's the thing. Like we're going to hurt each other. It's just human nature. We're going to behave badly. It's human nature. We need to know how to repair with each other.
We probably need to learn more ways to do that.
Yes,
We don't learn it in school.
we don't learn it.
That's why we
And
need
this
your
is
book.
something I teach. And this
Yeah.
is something I teach. Yeah. So
Um,
as a coach, as a site safety coach, this is something I teach is how to
that's great.
repair, how to notice one that there was a rupture in this relationship,
I love
and
that.
to how to repair it with each other.
You mentioned that you wrote about practical things
Hmm.
that people can implement in your book. Can
Hmm.
you share some of these practical strategies that employees can implement to create safer, more nurturing work environments?
Yes. So in my book, I talk about physical, emotional, and psychological safety, and have practices,
Mm,
team practices for each of the three types of safety. So for physical safety, one of the things that we can do is if it's a virtual meeting, for example, everybody comes in with camera off. Okay, so we're all starting on the same page, and then the host invites everyone to turn their camera on, and we take a few breaths together to become present in this meeting, because I'm sure we're coming from something else into this meeting.
mm,
And this allows our nervous system to orient to this group of people and to this context and what we're talking about, and start to feel safer in that way. And this is especially true for people that are historically oppressed or marginalized. You're
mm,
coming into a room, it's all white colleagues.
mm,
Your body, even if in your mind you don't have thoughts about it, your body's going to have a reaction. I may get
mhm.
eaten here. Right?
Yep.
And so again, being considerate of other people's bodies, from a physical safety standpoint, if we all enter on a level playing field, we all turn our cameras on together, have norms around, are we cameras on, are we cameras off, right? Like,
Mm,
have agree to that.
mm,
um, um, and 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 again, attuning our nervous systems to each other, so our nervous system can say, I'm safe, everything's okay, nobody here is going to attack me, starts to create that safety. The emotional safety piece is, what I was talking about, is talking about our feelings about like a new project, a new initiative, or even in the middle. How are things going? How are we feeling about it? What are we struggling with? Actually having specific meetings where the purpose is to talk, maybe vent about our feelings. And I think a lot of times people wait and they vent at the retro at the end,
yes.
right? It's usually a huge venting session,
Yes.
but the work would have been a lot different, and maybe we would have made different choices if we vented earlier as a
Mm,
team about
mm,
what's not working, than wait till the end of it.
mm. And what do we do about all the venting?
We believe people and we accept it. We don't
Mm,
necessarily have to jump in to fix it. That's actually a
mm,
huge thing that creates safety. A
mm.
lot of managers, again, very well-meaning people, will be like, "Oh, you're having hard feelings. Let me fix it for you."
Right.
And that for what's really interesting is that diminishes safety for people, because
Oh,
you're saying it's not okay for me to have it. It needs to be fixed.
that's super
Instead,
interesting.
yeah, instead we just need to acknowledge and accept, yeah, we are feeling this
Mm,
way. Look, you're not the only one feeling this way. And then you need to take a break. You don't need to make any decisions
mm,
after the venting session. Like, take a good break, then come back and say, "Oh, is there something that we wanna change? Is there something we wanna
mm.
stop?" When we do start, stop, continue kind of exercise,
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
based on how folks are feeling. at that point. But
Mm.
people rush way too quickly into fixing it to make the uncomfortable, hard feelings go away.
Yes.
And we don't need to.
Or
Because we're just
bypassing
allowed
it.
to. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We part as part of growing as human beings and working together as human beings is learning to tolerate the discomfort of hard
Mhm.
feelings in
And
ourselves and each
accepting
other,
that
and
and just
accepting
being with our feelings,
being with
processing
it.
it,
Yeah,
witnessing it. Yeah.
and that's the most healing thing that anyone can do is be witnessed
Right.
in their feelings. And
Right.
that's the most connecting. So let's say we're a team and we're having our little vent session,
Mhm.
okay? And we're not judging each other's feelings. You're allowed to have the feelings you're having. I'm allowed to have the feelings I'm having. They can be different, they can be opposite, right? They can be a mix of things. Now, we all witness each other in that. We're accepting of each other in that. And it's so connecting for
Mhm.
us as a team. Now it creates bonding
Mm.
for us. And so you don't need trust falls. You need venting sessions.
That's interesting because in every retrospective, it's, "All right, what are we gonna do next?" As in, "What do we do about
Yeah.
it?" We're very
Yeah.
action-oriented.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
I think too much.
Mhm. Yeah.
Again, based on us as being emotional creatures
Yeah.
as well. Too much.
Makes so much sense. Well, tell us a little bit about how you work. Do you work with individuals? Do you work with companies?
Oh, yes. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention psychological safety. So I
Oh,
said physical safety, emotional safety, psychological safety, and then
mm,
I'll answer your question.
yeah.
Um, for psychological safety, one of the biggest things you can do to create safer environments is to, again, have candid conversations about mistakes. And I
Mhm.
mentioned that earlier. If the leader especially can go first and say, I'm human, I make mistakes, if the leader can ask for help, if they do that publicly, others can also start to say, oh, I made a mistake. And if we take punishment out of that, but actually reward, but not reward, but like celebrate
Mm,
people when they appreciate people when they share their mistakes. So it's not no longer I'm scared to say I made a mistake. It's appreciated in our culture. That's gonna it's gonna skyrocket
yes,
psychological
because there's so
safety.
many of us who are afraid to actually speak up.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have a note from the audience. Let
yeah.
me bring it up from LinkedIn user. Sometimes you need to call a spade a spade. Being in a tough, toxic situation can make you more empathetic and a better leader. If you have been through trauma, you know what to recognize and you know how to behave. And it's cut off, so I'm going to read it verbally. I don't think that because you have been in bad situation, that is a pass for bad behavior. So true. Also,
Yes,
empathy for the person that might be making you feel unsafe doesn't mean that will change your behavior. That's true.
that's true. And I don't know if the goal is to I don't we don't that's not really in our control is to
Right.
change their behavior. What is
Fair.
in our control is to change ours.
Mm. What what is part of our behavior that we should change?
Um, how defensive are we getting around this person every time we talk to them? Are we avoiding them?
Mm.
Are we withholding key information from them? Are we avoiding collaborating with them? And
Yes to all
honestly,
of
I
the above.
mean, yeah, right. Like, and this is our behavior. Um, and I agree, like, just because we all behave badly, I'm not saying give anybody a pass. I'm
Mm.
just saying, like, all of us do this. There
Yeah.
is no exception that all of us behave badly. And having also care and empathy for yourself, like what has been your lived experience in the work environment. And I've had trauma, and I've had trauma from work.
Yeah.
Like this is, and a lot of people have more than people realize. Trauma is much more prevalent than people realize. Um, is and having that empathy for yourself and for that person, but also being clear, like having clarity of being able to see the situation for what it is,
Mhm.
and then making the right decision for yourself around if this is an environment or a team or an organization that you want to stay in or can stay in,
It's
because
also
long
okay to
term
not stay in that situation. We
it's okay to
we're
not
in
stay.
control, we have
Yeah,
the power, yeah, yeah.
yeah, because staying in a toxic situation long term has serious health issues, side effects at the end. Like people get very, very sick, and
Yes,
so
I got sick.
it's a and so it's important. I got sick. I got burnt out. I got sick. So um, part of what I'm doing also is like, I left corporate environment. That wasn't something that place I felt safe, and it was really making me physically sick.
Mhm.
Being in that kind of toxic stress and toxic and a chronic
Chronic, yeah,
toxicity,
yeah.
right? And so uh, I do think the LinkedIn user is right in that we need to be able to see the situation for what it is
Mhm.
and make healthy choices for yourself and not just you don't have to sit there and put up with bad behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. So, folks on the call, either now, while we're live, or later when you're watching the replay, there's a QR code here on the screen, where you could find more information about Alla and her work, as well as her book, which is free, by the way, to download. So, Alla, tell us, because I was in the middle of asking you this question. Tell us more about how you work with individuals and how you work with companies.
I mostly work with, from an individual level, I work with folks that have reports so that, and I teach them the manager skills that nobody's ever
Oh,
taught, right?
good.
Of how to create a safe environment, at least for your team, at least for the people
Mhm.
that report to you. And then I also work with teams, and I help teams create new rituals and operationalize safety
Oh my
so
gosh.
that and learn some of these communication skills, right? Like repairing these relationship skills, really, not communication skills, relationship skills, like repair, so that we increase the safety of the team. And I want to give you an example. I worked with a team for a SaaS company, and my background is in design, so it was a product design team.
Mhm.
And when I started working with them, and I went to their staff meeting and I observed them, they
Mm.
were just yelling at each other, not hearing each other, at each other's throats. They said, I don't trust this person. They couldn't make a decision. They couldn't get stuff done. Of talking back about productivity, like you can't make a
Yeah.
decision, right? And actually move into work. It did take time. So I'm not saying like this is a fast process, but in the course of 6 months, we put in new rituals where what I call a walk and talk, where you get away from your screen, you maybe go outside or in your house, you have just a audio conversation,
Mhm.
and you don't talk about work. You start
Mhm.
to get to know it. You get to know each other. You start
Mm.
to ask each other questions like, um, what's life teaching you right now, for example? You kind of go a little bit deeper and you start to connect to each other. And we changed their staff meetings, and we changed, how we actually talk to each other, what we talk about, um, and putting in new skills, to have like some of those venting sessions earlier on, but how to have them productively and not get out of control and those kinds of things.
I love that.
Um, at the end of all of that, this was a 180, a completely different team. I went to their staff meeting. They're like, we just trust each other. They actually said we love each other.
Whoa.
We support each other. I mean, this was a completely different team, and they were so much. That This is the beautiful part. They were so much more effective at their work, at their job, than when we started, which was they were at each other's throats at that
That's
point.
amazing, and how long did this transformation take?
It took 6 months.
Okay, that's very
I mean, I think that's
reasonable.
reasonable. I think
Very
that's
reasonable.
reasonable.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I think in your headline, you should say that you help teams operationalize safety, which leads to peak performance. It's
All
the
right. You're gonna be my marketing person.
operationalization. Yeah, because, I mean, part of it I do believe that most people think, "Oh, yeah, safety, yeah, that's important." But they don't really
Yeah,
know how to implement it. They
that's
don't know
right.
how to operationalize it. To them, it feels like extra work, you know?
And it feels abstract. Like, well,
Right.
how do I make you feel safe? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, that's now I have to tiptoe around you, which is
Right.
actually the opposite of
Right,
safety.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, but
yeah.
I really do feel like operationalizing this is the needle mover here.
Okay, Nancy.
You should do some user
I
research
hear
on
you.
this.
I hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and see.
yeah.
Well, cool. Thank you so much, Alla, for coming
Oh, my
on my live
pleasure.
stream. This is such an important topic, and, thank you for joining me to hold space so that
Thank you.
everyone, understands that we're not the only ones wanting
Yeah.
to feel safe.
And we're human and we
Mhm.
really need to feel safe in
Yes.
order to do great work.
It's a s it I was gonna say it's a safety issue. It is. It's, like, so basic. I can't believe that we don't focus on it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
great. Well, thank you so much, and maybe there will be a
Thank
part 2
you.
one day in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, take care.